The first shot came like a promise. Zorath, commander of the Azrathi war fleet, stood motionless, watching the target through the dense glow of his ship's observation deck. The human, unremarkable by all measures, was still alive. Even after the impact, even as his body shuddered with the force of the blast. He didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he laughed. It was a low, strange sound that echoed across the cold, sterile interior of the alien ship, a noise that struck a chord deep in Zorath's chest. The human's chest burned with the mark of the blast, his eyes wide, but his mouth curled into something between a grin and madness. The laughter was almost cruel in its mocking tone. Zorath's mandibles clicked in irritation, but it wasn't irritation alone that surged through him. There was something else, something unsettling. Fear. A flicker in his mind, something ancient that warned him, this is not what you thought it would be. Another shot came. This time, the human's body twisted under the assault, yet still, he didn't fall. He didn't even collapse. Instead, his laughter grew louder, as if the pain was a punchline to a joke the universe wasn't in on. Zorath's soldiers, 3 of them, exchanged uncertain glances. It was incomprehensible. No race had ever survived a shot from the Azrathi weaponry without disintegrating, let alone laughed afterward. Zorath's voice was low, even for him. What's wrong with him? A subordinate, a young Azrathi named Valthor, answered hesitantly, his digital eyes scanning the human's vitals. He's still alive, sir. He's showing signs of cellular regeneration. But it's impossible. We've never seen anything like this. Zorath's gaze flicked to Valthor. The alien was still watching the human, a strange unease creasing his faceplates. You say impossible, and yet we're standing here, aren't we? Zorath growled. What is he? The question was an accusation, an unwilling acknowledgement that something was terribly off. His fleet had come to Earth with only one goal, conquest. In their hands, Earth was supposed to fall. All its inhabitants, helpless under their superior might. But this human, this laughing, surviving thing, didn't fit the plan. Another blast. The human's laughter shifted, becoming sharp, almost triumphant. Zorath leaned forward, his intense eyes never leaving the screen. There was something familiar about that sound. A growing realization began to claw at him, an itch in the back of his mind that had been building ever since they set foot on this planet. He turned to Valthor, his voice as cold as the void. Send a message to the fleet. Tell them to prepare for something more. The humans are not what we expected. Alex's mind raced as his body fought the surge of energy coursing through his veins. He could feel the raw, crackling power of his cells regenerating faster than any human should have been capable of, healing wounds he had no memory of receiving. The laughter came unbidden, spilling out of his mouth in thick, ragged bursts. He shouldn't be alive, he knew that, but here he was. And it was almost amusing. He could see the aliens now, their confused faces glaring at him from the screens above. Zorath was there too, his large, reptilian eyes locked on him like an insect under a microscope. The commander's expression didn't shift, but the hesitation was there. It was subtle, but it was there. Alex's lips twitched into another grin, despite the gnawing sensation of fear that prickled at the edges of his consciousness. He knew they wouldn't understand it. They'd never understand it. They think they've conquered Earth, he thought bitterly. But they haven't even begun to see the power of it. He wasn't sure what he was anymore. The world he had known was shattered, but it didn't matter. Something had awoken in him. A shift in his mind, his body, his very essence. Earth had always been underestimated, a planet that seemed like any other in the universe. But they were wrong. Humans were wrong. Earth was wrong, in a way no one could comprehend. And Zorath? Zorath and his fleet would find that out, soon enough. The moment lingered. Tension hung in the air, thick with the unknown. Outside the human's prison cell, Zorath stood motionless, staring at the screen where Alex's laughter reverberated through the quiet. A plan was already taking shape in his mind. This couldn't be the end. Not for Earth. Not for the Azrathi. But deep down, Zorath wondered, what if this was only the beginning? The sterile walls of the Azrathi command ship hummed with quiet efficiency, the pulsating light of their engines casting a sickly glow over the cold metallic floors. Inside the medical bay, Alex stood tethered to a series of alien devices, his arms strapped to the cold examination table, yet his expression never wavered. The machines buzzed around him, analyzing his body in ways no human should ever be subjected to, but his eyes burned with the same defiant fire that had marked his survival. Zorath watched from the observation window, his posture rigid. His reptilian eyes, usually steely and unfazed, now held a flicker of something akin to disbelief. The human, this strange creature from Earth, should not be alive. The medical team had run every test in their arsenal. Weapons designed to obliterate an entire species had barely left a mark. It didn't make sense. "This is impossible, Commander," Valthor said from beside him, his voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "We've seen Deathworlds before, but not like this. This human, he's not just surviving. He's evolving." Zorath clenched his fists at his sides, his sharp claws glinting in the dim light. "Keep running the tests," he growled. "We will find out what makes him tick. We have to." But as the alien doctor continued to probe Alex's body, the human's laughter returned. It wasn't the manic sound it had been before. Now, it had a dark edge, one that made Zorath's soldiers uneasy, even fearful. The laughter echoed through the cold metal walls, and Zorath's grip tightened on the railing. Alex was still grinning, smiling, in fact, despite the unrelenting scans and the fact that his very cells were being broken down and rebuilt with each second that passed. To Zorath, it felt as though the human's body was mocking the very concept of vulnerability, pushing the limits of life and death. Was this what the humans were capable of? He thought they were fragile. Weak. But now, Zorath was not so sure. "I've had enough of this," Zorath muttered, turning to face Valthor. "Prepare the team. We will take him to the interrogation chamber. We're going to force him to answer our questions, all of them." Minutes later, the doors to the interrogation room slammed open with a deafening crash. Zorath strode in, his armored figure imposing and cold. Alex was already there, standing tall and unfazed, as though he had been expecting them. His eyes glittered with something that made Zorath's pulse quicken, though he would never show it. "You've caused quite the disruption," Zorath began, his voice smooth but filled with an underlying menace. "But no more games, human. Who are you?" Alex tilted his head slightly, that same unnerving smile stretching across his face. "You really want to know?" he asked, his voice dripping with an odd mix of amusement and something darker. "I'm just a man. A survivor. Someone who's learned how to keep going, no matter what." "Learned?" Zorath echoed, his tone low and threatening. "You're more than that. You should be dead. We've seen your kind before. You are not what you seem. Tell me why you laugh when others would beg for mercy. Tell me what you are hiding." For a moment, the human fell silent. The sound of his breathing filled the space, slow and steady. Zorath's mind raced, he was almost certain the human was hiding something. There was no way this was just some freak of nature. There was something more, something that connected the survival of this one human with the Earth itself. Alex finally spoke again, his voice softer but with an edge that made Zorath's skin crawl. "You'll never understand. Earth isn't just another planet to be conquered. We aren't just another species to be wiped out. You came here thinking we were weak. You thought you could break us. But you don't know us. You never have." Zorath's claws scraped across the floor as he took a step forward, his anger flaring. "I understand power. And what I see before me, what I feel, is more than power. It's something we can't afford to underestimate." His voice dropped lower, a dangerous whisper. "And that, human, is what will break you." But Alex's grin never faltered. "Keep thinking that," he said, his eyes narrowing with something cold and implacable. "You'll need it when the world you think you're conquering turns its back on you. When Earth wakes up. And it will. The room grew still, the air thick with tension. Zorath could feel the weight of the human's words sinking in, gnawing at him. He had expected defiance. Resistance, even. But this was different. Something deeper was at play here, and Zorath was no closer to understanding it. As the alien commander stood in the stillness, Alex's last words echoed in his mind. When Earth wakes up. The warning was like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon, unseen but felt. It would come. And when it did, there would be no hiding from the wrath of a planet that had been underestimated for too long. Zorath turned on his heel, the door slamming behind him as the tension in the room escalated. Earth was no longer just another conquest. It was a threat, one that would not be easily quelled. The Azrathi fleet hovered in silence above Earth, a cold and imposing presence in the dark vacuum of space. Inside the command ship, the air was thick with tension. Zorath paced back and forth in the war room, his eyes darting over the tactical screens that projected images of the planet below. His mind churned with the weight of what he had learned. The human, Alex, had not only survived the unthinkable, but something deeper seemed to be at play. Zorath had witnessed the way Alex's resilience defied explanation, he had laughed in the face of death, and now Earth itself seemed to pulse with a strange energy, a subtle yet undeniable vibration that seemed to echo through the very atmosphere. "Commander," Valther's voice broke through his thoughts, hesitant but urgent. "We've located the source of the tremors. It's coming from the Earth's core." Zorath's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? Are you suggesting that this planet, that its entire core is in motion?" "Yes, Commander." Valther's voice trembled, as though the realization was not one he was ready to fully accept. "The energy signatures are off the charts. It's unlike anything we've seen. Something is stirring beneath the surface." Zorath's claws curled into fists. "It can't be possible. The humans themselves, with their strange biology and ability to endure, were one thing, but the planet itself? No. The Azrathi had conquered countless worlds, yet this one felt like something entirely different. He couldn't let it be true, couldn't allow it to be real. The implications were catastrophic. "Prepare the fleet for immediate action," Zorath commanded, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "We will neutralize whatever this is before it becomes a threat." On Earth, deep underground, Alex felt it, too. A tremor deep in his bones. Not from the ship above, but something more primal, more ancient. The pulse of the planet, Earth itself, was awake, and it was calling to him. The laughter had faded, replaced by a deep, gnawing realization. His survival, his unexplainable resilience, it wasn't just about him. He had become a part of something far larger than he could have ever understood. He had been one of the first to feel it, this awakening. But it wasn't just the tremors, it was something in the air. Something that made his very skin hum with energy. He had thought the invaders would break him. But Earth? Earth was a force he was beginning to understand in ways he never had before. His body, now nearly fully healed from their tests, felt stronger than it ever had, as though the planet itself had chosen him as its vessel. He stood alone in a room in the depths of the alien ship. The walls pulsed with the artificial hum of the technology that surrounded him, but his focus was elsewhere. The connection between him and the Earth was undeniable, and with it came an unsettling certainty. If he could survive this, if he could hold on, the Azrathi would soon discover just how deadly this planet could be. Back on the Azrathi ship, Zorath was growing impatient. The reports had grown worse, the signals more erratic. His soldiers, those who had once feared nothing, now whispered among themselves about the unnatural force they were sensing. Zorath could feel it, too, the pull of something immense and unknowable. The vibrations were no longer isolated to the core. They had spread across the planet. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was a living entity, and it was pushing back against them. "What do we do, Commander?" Valthor asked, his voice tinged with anxiety. "We've never faced a world like this. It could be anything. It could be more than we can handle." Zorath's jaw clenched. His mind raced, but there was only one answer. We finish what we started. We take Earth, whatever it takes. But even as the words left his mouth, doubt gnawed at him. He had underestimated this world once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The humans had been broken once. They had endured everything the galaxy had thrown at them. But Alex knew now that they were never the true threat. Earth itself, with its ancient pulse, its sentient will, was something no alien force could withstand. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about the planet. And Alex was more than just a survivor, he was a catalyst. As he stared into the cold, harsh lights of the interrogation room, his eyes flickered with an understanding that made him smile again, this time, without mockery, without defiance. This was something deeper. Earth wasn't going to let them win. The hum of the Azrathi command ship grew deafening as it vibrated under the strain of the planet's awakening pulse. Zorith stood at the helm, watching in cold silence as the signals continued to flood in from Earth's surface. What had begun as a curious anomaly was now a force of undeniable magnitude. The planet had shifted from a quiet, unassuming rock to an unpredictable entity, a force that was beginning to push back. Zoritha's clawed fingers trembled as they hovered over the controls. Every fiber of his being screamed to engage, to strike before this force could fully reveal itself. But a new, unsettling truth had formed in his mind: the Azrathi might not be able to stop it. What had once been a simple military conquest now felt like a gamble. "Commander," Valther's voice broke through the tension, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fear. "The energy, it's escalating. We've lost control of some of the ship's systems. The entire fleet is." Before he could finish, a violent tremor shot through the ship. The walls rattled, and the floor beneath Zoritha's feet felt as though it had become liquid. The entire ship shuddered, as if caught in the throes of an earthquake. "The planet is fighting us," Zorith growled, his voice a low snarl. "Whatever power is coursing through Earth, it's reaching us. It's alive." The Azrathi fleet wasn't prepared for this. They had come to conquer, to invade, not to face something this unknown, this incomprehensible. Zoritha's mind raced as he struggled to maintain control over his ship's systems. Nothing had prepared them for the planet to fight back with such ferocity. "Pull all resources back. We're leaving," Zorith barked. "If Earth is this volatile, we need to regroup. This mission is no longer just about conquest, it's survival." On the surface, Alex could feel it in the marrow of his bones. The storm was coming, and it was Earth's call to arms. His body hummed with power, alive with the energy that pulsed from the planet beneath him. He had felt it before, a distant whisper in the back of his mind, but now it was clear: the Earth was sending him a message. It wasn't just about survival. He wasn't just the messenger. He was the bridge. His skin prickled as his connection to the planet deepened, an understanding blossoming in his chest. The invaders above, the ones who had underestimated humanity and the Earth, were about to learn that they had provoked something far beyond their comprehension. Alex stepped into the heart of the Azrathi command ship, his eyes scanning the room. The alien soldiers surrounding him stared in confusion. He could see their fear, masked behind their rigid postures and cruel weapons. Their thoughts were jumbled, unsure of what to do with him. And then, the walls groaned. A deep rumble reverberated through the metal beams, and suddenly, Alex's world seemed to align with the pulse of the planet beneath them. His breath steadied, his heartbeat in sync with the Earth's ancient rhythm. He turned to face the nearest soldier. "It's over," he said quietly, his voice steady and strong. "You don't even realize it yet, but Earth is awake. And it's coming for you." The soldiers hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes, but the tension in the room thickened like a fog. Zorith had underestimated the planet. He had underestimated the strength of humanity, yes, but more importantly, he had underestimated Earth itself. Alex didn't wait for their response. He was already moving, his body shifting into a new kind of rhythm, his mind fully aware of the task ahead. There was no room for doubt. Earth had chosen him, and with every pulse that emanated from its core, his own power grew. Zorith watched from the command center as the planet's pulse intensified. Systems were failing. Their ships, their greatest technology, shuddered under the strain. There was no longer any question. The Azrathi fleet was no match for the force they were up against. "Commander." Valther's voice cracked through the intercom. "We can't hold any longer. The planet, it's tearing us apart." Zorith clenched his fists. This was no longer a battle he could control. The only option left was retreat, but as he turned to issue the order, a blast of energy erupted through the ship. A wave of raw power tore through the hull, shattering the walls. The ship groaned, and lights flickered. Zorith's eyes widened as the atmosphere inside the ship became oppressive. They were losing. And then, through the chaos, he heard it, Alex's voice, echoing through the ship's intercom system, calm and commanding. "It's over." The sound of the human's voice felt like a death knell. But Zorith knew it was more than that. It was a declaration. Earth was no longer just a planet to be conquered. It was a force. And the Azrathi, for the first time, were the ones on the losing side.